here we are. I think we have audio right now. Perfect. And now we have audio. Now that we have audio, let me confirm that we have. Yes, here we are. Good afternoon, everybody. Just let me go through a few things before jumping in. Perfect. So let's me check. Here we are. Perfect. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Brian. Can you hear me? Can we hear Brian? Perfect. I can hear you. Perfect. So I think we are all set up and we are start having new viewers every second. So thank you very much, Brian, for joining us here. And good afternoon, everybody who is joining us through this YouTube live. My name is Manuel Navarro, your friendly host today for our live session. And everybody, we have an amazing surprise for you. Today, as our co-host, we have Brian Reale, our founder of ProcessMaker. Brian has been actively involved not just in the evolution of the platform, as well in the BPMN practice for years. So for those who follow us, and if you are not following us so far, please subscribe through our channel. Look through our videos. You're going to find amazing material in there. Here we have a lot of insights from Brian about the hyper automation space. But no more talking, Brian. So welcome to this space and thank you for joining us today. Perfect. Thank you very much. And just to talk about it, just 2 weeks ago we launched our latest version of the platform, our summer release, and we would like to explore during this session one of those features with you. It's our text to process modeler. But before that, let's talk a bit about why do you think it's important to go through an accurate but fast phase of discovery design, right? So what do you think about going through one of these phases in an accurate way and in a systematic way? Definitely. Let me go through our audience a moment. I think we are having some issues in our audio, please. So someone is writing us right now. Let me confirm what is going through it. Yes, we can hear each other. Yes. So now we have the challenge. Yes, to hear it. If you can, maybe let me check if I can make it a bit louder. It looks like it's too low from your side. Let me try to do something in here, please. Check if I can do something. But yes, looks like the audio from your side is kind of low. Yeah, the microphone is just a problem from the mic, from the source. Yeah, but we will figure it out. Just one moment. It's just feedback from our audience. Maybe it will make a difference. Thank you very much. I think just 1 second. I think there. This is gonna take some moment because we have a 30-second delay between what we talk and the transmitting. So while we get online, yes. Okay. And if you can look at if you can increase on your end the microphone, it will be great. Because we can hear you, but a bit loud. That's what they say. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, yeah, no problem. Just let me check 1 second again through this. Here's your volume. Looks like everything is well set up. Yeah, and I can see that we have levels from you, but not that loud as we expect. So maybe it's a problem from their on their streaming side. So yeah, if you can, do you have a Mac in front of you, right? Perfect. So let's try this live, right? So you can click in here in the sound options, right? So are you seeing my screen? And in the sound settings, you're gonna find this one here, and you can have an input volume, so you can increase it. Perfect. Thank you. And I'm gonna decrease mine, and I hope this works better. So we're gonna have feedback in a moment, and I think this is gonna, yeah, perfect. So I think this is gonna work. This is gonna work. Things that go in live, live demos and as well live sessions always has his technical challenges. So I think we should be good by now. I think we should be good by now. Perfect. So let's give it a try on a second one, and let's try to continue with this one. Let me confirm again. Yes, we have you at the maximum level. Here we have the collaboration camp as well. Yep. Yes, definitely. Audio will be way much better. Enter and output. Perfect. Perfect. So let's give it a try here. Let's continue. So yes, definitely, this is one of those challenges we have seen and the practice for years. A good discovery is always a key success factor of an automation initiative. And definitely the time of it is really important, and a non-abandonment, as you mentioned. So a non-abandonment of the process and the practice is always important. And this will also resonate in what is happening with digital outsourcing and the digital industry as well. So if we look at what we were talking about 2 or 3 years ago, in one of your interviews, you mentioned it, that the automation market as a trend will grow 22% of the expenditure, and actually by that time the expenditure was almost 13.8 billion dollars. And actually that's true. Look at this one. McKinsey talked about it, and actually with a pool they did on 53 businesses, they found actually that expenditure just in the digital part of any automation or hyper automation initiative, they are spending almost 112 billions of dollars. So, how do you think a highly automated feature as the one we have to generate process based on natural language will impact the savings and accuracy of these digital initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, we know that companies have a number of problems right now. One, they can't, even if they could spend the money, in many cases, they can't actually find specialized resources to do things, and that's contributed to um, the inflation problem that's taken over since kind of COVID, and many other things. And so, this idea that in a very short order, a lot of these problems are going to go completely in the reverse direction because we're going to have so many different types of AI aids. And one of those is being able to design processes more quickly. So without a doubt, it'll bring costs way down. Now, what's going to happen to the labor force is a whole nother question.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really important to go through these phases as fast as we can and as accuracy as we have. So we have found that these challenges that we usually have in the initial phase of these projects are always associated. And again, we have seen it, and a big paradox. We have a lot of documents. We have a lot of information from the companies, but trying to have an example, trying to drive these sessions on the as is stages is always really complex. So we have this feature, and today I would like to walk you through the to everyone in here. I would love you to walk you through our latest one of our latest feature, our generating from text model, using one of simple example that we always struggle, or more than a struggle, we always find out as a common process in many of the companies that we have worked with in the last few years. And this is just an invoice approval process, right? So I'm gonna walk and I'm gonna play next to you on this simple exercise, how we can drive an interview, how we can start creating our initial sketches from the processes based on the just the basic description, based on the description of a simple process. So let me just log in into our new platform. Just give me a second. I'm gonna log in into this instance, and we're gonna jump in here. And this is again an sneak of our latest version of the platform, so we can have a look
You're
into the.
not uh, you're not presenting it yet, are you? I don't see anything on the screen.
Yeah, let me share my screen as well with you. Yes, maybe you are just seeing me on the camera, but not much my slides, my screen. Just 1 second. There you are. Here it is.
There we go.
Nah, there you go. Perfect. Great. So now we are all set up. So we're gonna jump here into the designer tab. And a few things I just wanted to notice for those who have played with ProcessMaker before. Look at this when we have a new tab of analytics in here. We're going to have a look on that feature in following sessions. And here, look at this when we have lots of templates for you to play with it. Definitely going through simple HR processes to a specific industry templates. But today we will be playing on how to generate processes from natural language. So whether if you want to start a project in ProcessMaker from one of our templates or directly from the feedback of your users or with the documentation of your processes, here you have a great tool where we can just simply type in the description of a process, and we will be seeing how our platform will generate a model. So let's start with this one. A PO. How many times we have seen a purchase order project in ProcessMaker, Brian? How many times you have heard about it?
Yeah, I mean, it is not just for us, but for every sort of digital process automation platform. The purchase order is a pretty popular process. You've got leave request in HR, you've got purchase order, and people always kind of think, well, shouldn't that be done by my ERP? And yes, the purchase order gets put into your ERP, but what about the approvals and some of the processes or procedures that you want to make sure you enforce at your company? Last night at 6 or 7 p.m., we were on with a company that, again, it was a purchase order approval, connecting it to SAP, but they just couldn't, they can't manipulate it like they need to in SAP.
Exactly. So this is a common challenge. Everybody has to step on it in their life when they are talking about defining processes or automating steps of the processes, and even more with a hyper automated world. So, and this is a great way to start. If we want to start any conversation regarding how our business process looks like, we can just type in here the process that we would like to start modeling. But this is an interesting challenge because when you start talking to people, they are not necessarily accurate or specific in the way they envision the process. And look at this one, the generator of processes we have in ProcessMaker will give you definitely a visual aid on how this will look like from the very beginning, right? From the initial task of just going into the discovery of your actual state of a process. So let's try to give it a run and let's try to identify a few things that are important for us to be more specific when we start talking about modeling processes. So here we have. Just give it a second while we are loading this. We have a lot of things on the bandwidth right now. Here we have, look at this one. And this is, and look at some of the ambiguities we have. These may start with, look at this one. If it's possible and if they match, look at all
Can you make that a little? Can you make that a little bigger, Manuel?
Yes, definitely. Let me zoom in on this. Can you see it better?
Yeah, that's better.
Perfect. Look at this one. So a basic process. Let's look at and look at what you mentioned in here. Going through an SAP, that is specific task, right? Validate the charge numbers. This is a common. This is one of those common challenges, right? In a purchase order to an invoice approval, going through your ERP system to confirm the numbers or the specific line items that we will be approving in an invoice, right? So yes, one of those elements that are really important is using a clear terminology. And if you look at it, we can be way much more specific on this, and actually we can ask the model to regenerate this to start seeing which other ideas we can have regarding the process.
Well, and actually, as I read that one, I as a business user would want to make a couple changes out of the gate. So,
Yeah.
and it'd be interesting to see how our solution interprets it. So we say an invoice review may start with a confirmed PO, whereas I would say, and then the change numbers should be validated in line against the master corporate change number list.
Charge number, the charge
Charge
number
number
net.
list.
Yes.
Okay. So I would start by saying um, an invoice, a purchase order number is generated first, and then against the purchase order we can receive an invoice. So a lot of times the invoice, you're waiting to receive an invoice, and there's a field on there, purchase order number, that your system generates. So you might need to pull that number, deliver it to the vendor, have them put it on their invoice before they send you the invoice.
Yes.
And we might have two processes. We might have a process where there is no PO number and where there is a PO number.
Great. Let's give it a look on this change that we have done regarding the generation of the PO number first before getting the invoice, right? So I'm going to just click on generate. And these are the kind of things that we discover during the sessions with our customers, right? So look at this one. Here you have as a start event, and this is pretty accurate. Look at this one. This is a start event that's gonna be kick off when a purchase number is generated, right? As you mentioned, you might have two different processes: one to manage the purchase orders, the other one to manage the invoices, right? And look at how it interpreted it. It interpreted it the appropriate way. Then you receive the invoice and validate the purchase order number, and then the gateways is gonna go through a yes or a no this action. What do you think about this? In just
Yeah,
10 seconds.
and I think this is great because then, this is what, 10 years ago we said, don't let the technology get in the way of the process design, right? We're two business people. You're not having to explain any technology, any technical concepts to me. And now I see this and I think, okay, actually, no, I don't want it that way. What I would want are two processes. One where we send the generated PO number to the customer, and it's probably an approval to generate the PO number. And then there's the purchase order process, which is separate from the invoice reception and approval process. So those would be two processes. Ideally, you'd have a couple pools. I don't think we're supporting pools yet. But we could go on, and it's so easy to go on and on because now we can just say, oh, no, what, that doesn't look right. And I don't even have to click or drag. And if I have my voice recognition turned on, we could literally just be saying this and watching it redraw, which is amazing.
Yes, definitely. And we can continue exploring this. Look at one of those challenges that we usually have during the definition of processes, how specific we are in the terms that we are using, on how that specificity will impact in our models. For example, the confirmation whether an invoice is approved or not after those line items or those purchase order numbers are verified. So I'm just going to add that specific phrase here in the modeler just to continue with the example. And look at this one. Here I'm saying the system must send a confirmation, and I can be as much specific as I need. For example, a confirmation via email whenever an invoice is approved. So I'm just going to regenerate, and let's have a look on how this will help us. Here you have it. So there it is, a new module. And look at the flow, just add a new element into the model. How cool is that?
Yeah, and that's also interesting. By the way, in BPMN, you have a send mail intermediate event, and you can also use a send mail task. And that's one of the interesting redundancies in BPMN. And there's been debate about that, like why that shouldn't really exist. Others have said, yeah, no, it's fine, because in one case, it's more of a human emphasis, like a human sending a mail or a system sending a mail. So I don't know. I don't think it will. Well, it might if you say. I don't know what would happen if you say
Let's
if
do
you
it.
specifically ask it to use intermediate event for that send email instead of a task.
I
Show the
haven't.
intermediate event icon. I don't know if it has that icon yet.
I don't know.
You could try it.
We can try it, and definitely we're exploring better ways to do this every day, right? But I think right now it's not support, but we can give it a try. The system must send a confirmation using an intermediate event, right? An intermediate event. Just 1 second.
Yeah, you
An
might want a
intermediate.
confirmation email using an intermediate event and see what happens.
Let's. I removed the email. Do you want me to keep the email on it?
Well, just to see if it supports the intermediate event. It may not. It may only do it as a task,
Let's have a look.
which is fine. Both are correct, but I'm curious to know.
Yes, and we are getting better on the generation of this every day. Let's have a look on it. No, it's still not on it. Definitely, he left the space for it, so he's smart
Ah,
enough.
okay. Yeah,
So
that's good.
that's good. That's good. He left the space. He knew that something it will be here. He didn't put it, so he's thinking about it, which is great. Great.
Yeah,
So
no, that's
this is
interesting.
yeah.
And it's great because BPMN is a semantic language. It's a highly descriptive language. It has very predictable rules. And so the other thing is this will continue to get, well, as we add the elements into our own prompt engineering, then we already have the full, well, most, the most used part of the BPMN palettes, the descriptive and analytic classes. And so once we can access those text, then you can make your own decision. Do you want to use the intermediate event or do you want to use a task to represent that email activity?
That's great. That's amazing. Perfect. So yes, those are the kind of challenges we always have, and there is another element that we always struggle, and you mentioned it before, the similarity of the terms, right? So many times with our users, we are struggling trying to have the same verbiage of the terms that we want to modulate within the process. For example, some of them will mix concepts such as purchase order or such as invoice approval, right? And this kind of tools will help you to actually realize visually the difference in the flow, which things has to be first, which things has to be later, right? So, for example, and this is one of those things that we want to show today as well. If, for example, I want to change this purchase order for a invoice for an invoice against the purchase order, you're gonna actually see it that this is something that it really doesn't fit correctly. Let's give it a try. Look at this one: generate invoice, review invoice. It's kind of a different approach, right? The system what's we have, yeah, seeing an intermediate event using an email. Let's just change this one, and let's run it again. You can keep an interview with a business user or as an expert in process all the way down with this kind of feature. But let's talk about how this can be actually used by anyone around the world. So this is another of a challenge that we always have in the company. So we work in different markets. We are a worldwide tool, and one of those challenges we always have are the languages that our customers uses as a main language in the process, and the way they need to distribute this process across different locations. So how many times you have heard about a customer that requires the same process in a different language, or requires to go through one of this conversation in two or three languages in across their locations, Brian?
Yeah, all the time. So, so I think, I'm immediately thinking of a couple of our international clients where they have a group of process designers. The process designers do want to have some level of being able to share, and we have a whole new technology for that called PM blocks and the templates, which is really, really powerful. So they have a central group designing processes, and they're working in a dozen different countries. So of course they may or may not want the same exact process. They certainly would love to be able to take a process, take a template, bring it into here, translate it, or design and then translate, or design and then translate and import, multiple times. So I think it could be an enormous time saver. And this isn't even half of it, because we also have the tool on the user side so that all the forms are now can automatically be translated as the user loads the page based on the user's profile settings. So, I could design one process, one form, and if you load it and your profile says you want it to be in Spanish, and I say I want my profiles in English, I'll see the form in English, you'll see the form in Spanish. So there's the possibilities now for what used to take potentially days or maybe even longer of work. Now we're talking about seconds. So, I mean, that's the relation there of the amount of work saved and the potential impact on ROI is just enormous, like more so than anything that we've seen in the last decade that we could
Yeah,
add to the solution.
definitely. So let's give it a try on the same example, the same process we have been playing with in different languages, right? So let's try generate this model in German. I'm gonna regenerate this one. And definitely as a starting element, it's always good to have a confirmation of the grammar and the style and the different elements regarding the process. And this is one of those features that the centers of excellence on processes across different companies will rely on when they are working with the platform in different locations for different customers. And look at this, when we can keep playing on this, we can generate this in French. Let's give it a try. We're gonna use let's use as well a different char set for this. So we'll generate this after we see this in French, we can generate this as well in Chinese. So let's give it a try, generate this model as well in Chinese. And this reminds me, one of our customers we have in Asia, they were always trying to have the same process regarding managing their locations, their warehousing locations and transport locations, not just in Chinese, as well in English and other Eastern Asian languages as well. And this is look at this one, we can as well use specific languages that try to that will help us to go through a more usable experience. So let's try to use it with Esperanto. All those ideas that we can have to have a unified concept and a unified model that will help us to include different regions and different users, it will be great. Look at this one here. This is the kind of challenges that we have always when we try to jump into different languages, right?
That's great.
Perfect. Yeah. So this is one. This is just a few of the features we have. But just to wrap up and start closing our session, we have here for today some hints or some elements that are important to identify when we are working on a stage of identify process as is in different companies. So it's important for everyone who works in the design of the process to identify these 5 elements: the boundaries of the process, the activities and events, the resources, the control flow, and all the additional elements that are around the process. And for today's session, here we have just a simple exercise. Look at this one. This is just a simple exercise of a common process that has some interesting things. For example, this is a process that starts with a ministerial inquiry and it finishes with a response, right? It has different activities, right? Register those elements in a system, as you mentioned before, that PO, that purchase order process you were discussing yesterday, it needs to register in SAP. Here we have pretty much the same challenge: register something in a system, inquire to investigate. This is usually a manual task. A ministerial response needs to be prepared. Here we can have some options to get into getting documents from the different users or generating our own documents. The preparation of the response. Look at this one. Here we have some resources. Here we have the cabinet officer, the principal registrar. These are the persons or the areas that are interacting with the process. We need to review a process, and all those elements has to be identified for those who are working in the practice of creating processes and automating processes. And let's give it
You
a
know,
try. I hear you.
by the way,
But
there's something pretty interesting as well at a level of linguistics, because there's been an entire multiple centuries of debate about when you describe something, is it what makes the object? If I call a glass a glass, did a glass exist before I gave it the word glass to describe it, or what sort of comes first? And that's been discussion of just some of the centuries or last century's greatest philosophers. So if you think about it here, it's really interesting, because now you start wondering, well, okay, I've got this description and it's of a process. BPMN is a process language. So once I have the process in BPMN, what's the real process? Is it the BPMN, or was it the English description that I gave to generate the BPMN? And the root of the process, really, BPMN is a much closer language. And so then, it would be fun to do this sort of exercise of round trip making a round trip between the BPMN and the language, because certainly there's no way you would get whatever process we get out of this if you then take the process and send it backwards through an AI, through the ProcessMaker AI. There's no way you're going to get the same description, because the description is just not nearly as efficient as the BPMN that describes the process.
exactly, and at the end, those processes are executed by persons or by systems that were configured for persons who understand uh, what this is about. What is the process about? Here we need the interpretation, and BPMN it's an excellent way, a more efficient way to have a worldwide representation and notation that is standardized to actually define how processes are in a company, and all companies runs by processes. So this is universal in terms of what is required for a company. And so just to give it a last try of in our feature, let's run this one to see how the ministry officer inquiry looks like in our AI generating AI modeler give us. So let's run it and see how it looks like. Look at this one, and it looks pretty neat. We start with a ministerial inquiry, we register the inquiry, and we can start playing with it, right? Register the inquiry. Here we have has been received. It will register into the system using a script. Let's start adding elements, right? So this might be similar to the example we discussed before. So let's see how this looks like.
What would also be an interesting test is if you start designing in English versus German versus French, uh, how much faster is it to get to the right model? Meaning, which language, for whatever reason, is more efficient at describing the real nature of a process? Um, and I say that because I was thinking, Heidegger had a belief that Greek was the language that was most closest to the real thing. He had lots of writing on what was the real thing, and he thought German was pretty close as well, because German, if you know German, it's made up of lots of blocks, and so when you see a word in German, they're often very long, but they're very easy to understand because you can kind of dissect the block. Whereas the Romance languages are not that way. They're actually highly inefficient because they don't have a lot of times the root doesn't have a real meaning. In the etymology is not like really grounded. So be interesting to see if by that nature, like if you started in Greek, somehow you could get more quickly to the actual process.
Yeah, and you have that challenge in all languages. For example, our company has many of their resources in Latin America, and you are talking about the Romance languages. Think about the Spanish. In Spanish, we have lots of words to describe the same thing. So, as you mentioned, maybe Spanish is not the most efficient way to do it, but even though you have here a great tool to drill down into those specificity, into those elements that are required, right? So, and you can start playing with it directly from your modeler in time series. And look at this one. We did like two big exercises, a PO number and an inquire, and less than 45 minutes here live, just playing with different elements and with different changes on the description of the process. And as you can see, look at our model. It has the script, so it recognizes the script. It's ready for you to start going through your integrations and playing with the platform. So Brian, do you want to add something more in during for today's session? I think we have going through a lot of things today, pretty nice things today. So I want to hear your some words before closing from you.
Yeah, no, this has been fun, and I think it's something where we want to encourage users to, of course, explore this new feature, and to think about it, like we said in the beginning, as a way to, if you're a consultant, if you're a center of excellence, as you said, and you are sitting with business users in your own company or in the company you're consulting for, this is a magical tool. You can now get to work and iterate on work really thousands of times faster than you could before. And it's in the most basic format. It's just written language, so everybody understands that. Everybody can work with it. The barrier to entry has just been obliterated. And so, we want to see what's capable. We look forward to having our partners and customers push this to the limits, and of course, tell us what they want to see next. And I'll give you a hint: if we can do this with the process design, you'll imagine we can do it with the rest of the process, and that's a hint of what's coming.
And a handful of features will come with this. So always stay in touch with us. Follow us through our media. We will be continuing with this weekly series showing new features, new elements from our latest versions. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you very much, everyone who has joined us for today's sessions. And I hope you see you in another session, Brian. And I hope to see you, everybody, in following sessions. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Manuel.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.